Welcome. I'm Michael Boriskin, standing in Aaron Copland's longtime New York home, and I'm so delighted that you could join us for this program in our virtual series called Cultivated Spaces 2.0. Each of these programs spotlights the Composer Fellows of our 2021 Cultivated Emerging Composers Institute and premieres the new works we commissioned from them especially for this. These short new pieces were the focus of their work at Cultivate during an intensive week of rehearsals and work sessions with our Music from Copland House ensemble and Cultivate director Derek Bermel in a hybrid live virtual format. And because of the lingering pandemic in 2021, instead of the concluding public concert at which each of the new pieces would normally have been premiered, we had to turn for a second year to this online platform to introduce the pieces. And for that, we really want to thank I Care If You Listen, which is again serving as our media partner. I am so pleased to turn this over now to Daniel Reza Sabzghabaei, who will tell us a bit about his Cultivate work called Residues, which reaches back into his Persian heritage. And then we will hear Music from Copland House's complete performance of the piece, followed by a brief conversation between Daniel and Derek. So enjoy, and we'll see you later.
Hello, my name is Daniel Reza Sabzghabaei. I'm a creator from Denton, Texas, currently based in Ithaca, New York. You're about to hear a new work of mine that was commissioned last summer by Music from Copland House as part of their Cultivate program for emerging composers. My work is called Residues Ostinato, Bad az del Kasho Tajvidi, which is some Persian, which simply means after Delkash and Tajvidi. Delkash was a very famous 20th century singer in Iran, and Tajvidi was a very famous violinist, composer, and theorist living in Iran at the same time. This set of works, Residues, each reflect on a different song that I grew up with. This one is called Atashe Karevan, which means caravan fire. And it's a very famous song from the 20th century that my father brought over with him on old tapes that was really special to me. And these tapes had a large effect on the way I heard this music. So in this tune, that was a big part of my oral memory and inspiration. So for this quartet of players, I was interested in trying to explore that timbre, that timbral memory, the color of the tape. So throughout this work, there are some noises from the piano that's prepared with some foil that is kind of the detritus of that memory. And as a part of this, there's more of this idea of timbral exploration from the memory. So another really close part of this work is the sound of Delkash's voice. And I work with Moran Katz, the clarinet player, to really look at the vocality of the clarinet and use that as a meeting point for the exploration of Delkash's voice. So it's kind of this game of timbral telephone or color telephone. And it's a work that's based on an ostinato from the song, which comes from the title. So I hope that you enjoy this exploration of a memory of mine, which was very special and tied to this beautiful song.
Hi, my name is Derek Bermel, and I'm the director of the Cultivate program at the Copland House for emerging composers. And I'm very pleased to be here with Daniel Sabzghabaei. And he's joining me to talk about the work that we just heard, Residues, the first movement being Ostinato, which was written for the Cultivate program. Welcome, Daniel.
Hello, good to be here with you. Thanks for taking some time.
Yeah. And so that was really something else. I mean, you, uh, in dealing with the kind of vocality of the clarinet, as you put it, you really got into some incredible sounds and were able to just evoke, whatever the word is, so many different kinds of timbres and textures from this group of instruments. Being a clarinetist myself, I was really drawn to the wailing kinds of sounds that you're able to get out of the instrument, and something that is, I don't know if we want to get into talking about heterophony or anything else, but what can you tell us just a little bit more in more detail about the piece? I know you spoke about it before, but maybe give us an insight into how you approach writing for this particular ensemble.
Yeah. This set of pieces each blossom from different works that I grew up with that were special to me. This one being Attaché Caravan, which was a song by Tajvidi Music and Bijan Tariqi, who's the lyric writer for it, poet. This is from the 1930s, performed really famously by seminal performer Del Cash, really famous. So in these works, and in this one especially, the first in the set, they each reflect on these tunes in different ways, and they take them as timbral places to blossom from, and not just harmonic or melodic, or, as you said, like heterophonic bases. So here, tied into this memory of the tune, is the way that I consumed it, which is through a tape my dad brought from Iran. So I'd say the two most important core memories for me with this song is the voice of Del Cash and the sound of the tape. And in both instances, I was just interested in exploring those two timbres, not in ways to mimic them. So I'm not trying to mimic Del Cash's voice or mimic the tape, but rather take each as a place for a timbral jump off, and the ways that sounds influences other sounds. So that was a big part of me working on this piece with the ensemble. I had a lot of one-on-one meetings with Moran, working on like listening to Del Cash, thinking of the sounds that Del Cash can get, and then trying to find something that the clarinet explores vocally. And so we worked together to really get a bunch of these different timbres, and she did an excellent job. And we spent, again, a lot of time saying like, okay, well, whenever she's doing some of the tahrir singing, this ornamentation, is there something we can do here with this technique, that technique? And we came up with a couple that I think really sound good. And also Moran has an experience with klezmer music, which really comes out in this, I think, performance as well.
Yeah, I mean, talk about kind of cousin artistic traditions and bring that together. It was kind of nice. You had your Israeli clarinetist and mixed with your work. But how do you personally relate? Now, were you born in the States, or were you born in Iran, Persia?
Yeah, so I was born in Texas. I'm from Texas. My father was from a town called Abadan on the west coast of Iran, which is famous for oil refineries. And then my mother's from Iowa. So I came to this part of myself a bit late. Growing up, my father didn't really encourage a lot of exploration of my background, except for in spurts of nostalgia where he was missing home. And then he would encourage me to look up some poetry, or we would go out to a restaurant. But he, with his death in 2016 in a car accident, which is, awful, this really encouraged me directly to really focus on this part of myself, to not lose it. And since about 2016, 2017, it's been a big part of my work as an artist and as a person. I'm really close to being fluent in Farsi now, and before that, my father never taught me any Persian, so it's been a big part of like everything that I do. My dissertation is about Persian music, so it's been a process since that time, and I'm every day excited to continue to get closer to what makes me me through my work as an artist and through my research.
Well, I was really intrigued by this notion of nostalgia mixed with an almost scientific, desire to get closer and closer to notating exactly what you want, because your notation is really complex and a little bit intimidating at first, I think, for the players, off-putting, almost, but very, very precise, and shows just a deep dive into trying to figure out exactly what's happening in this kind of. And so what intrigued me so much about your approach was this kind of holistic versus reductionist kind of philosophy. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how that feels as an artist to be working both sides, one very emotional and one almost kind of at a distance?
Yeah, I would say at the end of the day with my work, the goal is to, reconcile what makes me and all of my influences, and to be as precise as possible in doing so. But knowing that like this part of myself, meaning like my cultural heritage, exists mostly off the page, especially, until the, mid 20th century. Knowing that it's a relatively futile effort to put down something that wasn't made to be put down in its, truest form. I shouldn't say truest, but in its originating form. That it's, it's a different effort, a different job than performing dastgah music, than navigating the radif, which is the teachings of a master artist. I don't claim to be an expert in the radif. I know a lot about dastgahs, but I've never studied with a master performer. This is just my work growing up in a Persian household and focusing more on it lately. But yeah, it's kind of an in-between, right? Because some of the notation is very precise, as I want to be precise with the performers that I've worked with and the transcriptions that I've done. But also knowing that the tradition doesn't blossom from there. It's just, I would say for me, trying to give those performing my music the best shot possible and making the sounds that I want in the most efficient way possible. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. You had a video explaining how to play the piano stuff with you, with all your little paraphernalia there, just to show how to get the buzzing sound and what you were going for. And actually, I thought that's a quite modern and sophisticated way to communicate that to people. Or well, I would say instead of trying to just explain everything in program notes, which you did quite well, I think, on the page, but still trying to just embrace the idea that they could watch a 5-minute video and learn very quickly without a lot of head scratching.
100%. And I think that goes back to reconciling an aural versus a notated tradition. A lot of this score and many pieces that I'm doing exist at that crossroads where I'm working at a crossroad of tradition and style, so that you can look at the notation and get all that you need. But in many of my pieces, I do just that. I send video scores or explanations of me doing the thing, especially if it's a vocal piece. I'm a singer. I can just show you what I want and the sound of what I want. But yeah, like these, I think you can gain a lot more instead of like a really fancy notated score with beautiful graphics, like from the mid 20th century, all of these like scores that look all crazy, but they sometimes tell you very little about how to perform the music. I think that instead of doing that, you could just send a small video being like, here's how you make the sound. This is what your body looks like doing it. This is how it should feel. I think that's a lot more successful and connects me to like this non-notated tradition that's more so about handing down techniques or handing down sounds. And I feel
Yeah.
like kind of
Now people say we're in a post-literate generation, and actually, when I was at school, I remember that it took I think all we could save on a computer was something like 1 second of audio. That was so much that it would blow up a computer at that time. And so the world has changed, and it's great to embrace that. And yeah, I was just wanted to ask you, what was it like, the experience of working on this with musicians for the full week?
Yeah, well, the piece improved a lot. I mean, even before the week happened, I had been meeting separately with Moran about deciding. Basically, I had this piece in my head for a little while, like, oh, I want to do like a really clarinet, heavy virtuosic part. But if these sounds aren't going to be in your like field or in your like body, and you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. But I just need to do another piece. So we worked on it and it worked really well and I was really happy with it. So like workshopping that before and then coming in with all the rest of the players and hearing how things fit all together and getting feedback on, ways to improve certain parts. Paula had really great feedback, so did Peggy. And Alexis as well. Like it just, all of the women really came together to improve the piece in regards to orchestrational things, like small little things like, well, this, instead of it in this octave, you could try this, or like more simple fingerings. It just really helped a lot. And then, of course, the piano part, like it will, you heard it. There's lots of foil in the left hand, which has this crinkling sound that creates like this bed throughout the whole work. That's different from every piano. So, Peggy gave like advice on which strings are going to work and whatever. And it was all like important, and slowly things changed. And even, working with you, talking about ways that form drives forward, that was really helpful for me. And I would say that the thing I took away most from it was a discussion of the first half of the work, talking about how you don't have to have something be loud for a really long time for it to feel loud. It just needs to have an initial attack, and then the ear latches onto it. And that really affected how I did dynamics and hairpins for the first part, which is kind of this long search for the ostinato, which I originally just had really loud for a long time, but it was exhausting. So it lost its power.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought, this is one thing that like was a really good piece of advice for me as an artist, that like, oh, the ear doesn't need it to be loud the whole time, and in fact loses its power in that way.
Yeah, and that can be also culturally determined depending who's listening to it and what the situation is. But yeah, I think it's a very, very effective piece. And on listening to it again, it was just reminding me how effective your writing was. And even though you may have had someone with klezmer experience, it don't sound like klezmer because those harmonies that you get really, the flat second and those kinds of very, very strong modal harmony that you hear really evokes music from Iran. And also I really appreciate what you did with tying in the sense of listening to it through a medium that's an older medium. And so it's a very rich piece, and thank you so much for coming back and sharing some thoughts about it, and I hope it gets many more performances.